Greetings from Cornell University's ILR School, where we, like you, are deeply concerned about the present and future meaning of algorithms, gig labor, and the future of work. In the US, there's tremendous anxiety about this gig economy, especially the digital labor platforms like Uber that seem to threaten traditional work. Uber is demonized as something that is destroying traditional job stability with the 40-hour work weeks and health benefits and everything else. It's very easy to get swept up in the technology and futurism and neglect the most important truth, that digital workers are not choosing between online work or nothing at all. They are choosing to do this digital work in comparison with, or very often in conjunction with, traditional jobs. For middle and working class hourly workers, this comparison is with shift work, that is in retail and in restaurants, that is the low end of the service economy. This is 17%, or about 1/5 of the US workforce, that has on-call or rotating schedules, which makes planning for the rest of life very, very challenging. In addition to which, don't forget, the low wages. And so Uber is not causing this change. Uber is possible because of this change, because shift work is so bad. Uber is the waste product of the service economy. And it is this change in the past decade or so in how we organize shift work, especially in terms of how we organize just-in-time scheduling, that has made this possible. And so to understand the 1099 gig economy requires recognizing that even those who receive W-2s aren't living in a world of stable employment, people in traditional jobs. These workforces are managed by algorithms to be kept lean, to keep workers arriving for their jobs just in time for what needs to be done. But for workers, this move to leanness has resulted in uncertain week-to-week scheduling and a more volatile income. Now, of course, from the employer's side, digital gig work should be understood as an extension of this on-demand workforce. And instead of discontinuity, we should be thinking about continuity. That is, a just-in-time labor scheduled by algorithm. But from the worker's perspective, there could be another view. Gig work could possibly be a way to reduce income volatility through what we at the Institute for Workplace Studies are calling a work portfolio. Now compare this with how we normally think about asset portfolios, that is stocks and bonds. A work portfolio should do the same thing. It should provide the highest return with the least risk. And through diversification, as we know, this is possible to increase the return while decreasing risk. This so-called only free lunch in economics requires, however, a deeper understanding of how workers mix their jobs. We need to understand how workers combine traditional labor jobs, like at Starbucks or the Gap, with these digital platform jobs like Uber, Lyft, and Instacart. And to study one company at a time fundamentally misses what is new about this economy. This reconceptualization matters because while there's been a great deal of attention paid to income stagnation, to income inequality, there's been much less attention paid to income fluctuation. So consider that in America, income, even for the most average household, it appears to be extremely volatile. A study by JP Morgan Chase earlier this year found that from the median household, that is people directly in the middle of the income distribution, 55% of them, that is a little over half of the average household, had month-to-month variation income of at least 30%. That's tremendous. Before we even talk about inequality, we need to talk about volatility. It's impossible to plan one's life, to plan one's budget with income fluctuations of 30%. And so offsetting those swings in income, not just promoting higher incomes, is essential for worker well-being. And what's interesting about this is it might not cost anything. And so right now, we don't know what this optimal work portfolio mix is for workers. We don't know what the equivalent mix of stock and bonds, of Starbucks and Uber is for workers. But for employers who want to see their contractors succeed, finding this answer will make for a more sustainable and more inclusive economy. And for workers, solving this puzzle will help them find a more stable overall income and promote long-term economic security. Now, this isn't to say that income inequality isn't a problem. It's just saying it's not the only problem. And so right now at the Institute for Workplace Studies, we're in the middle of an important research survey on this issue. And unfortunately, that data isn't coming back until December, but hopefully we can report back that soon. Now, in the US, this is primarily done, this just-in-time scheduling is associated with this company called Kronos, which promotes workplace management solutions. It's very top-down. It organizes many chains and major corporations. But even in this Kronos software, there has been a move towards trying to figure out how to make workers more empowered, how to create the opportunity for workers to self-schedule. Now, for smaller businesses, there are even startups like Homebase that allow this kind of distributed scheduling from your workers' phones, even for small businesses. Workers can swap shifts, pending employer approval. They can schedule work. They can get shift reminders through SMS. And so in this vision, there is an algorithm that sets the first pass, but people can alter it. Now, while the balance of power is still with the algorithm and still with the employer, there is more shuffling at the margins. And so this offers at least a possibility of a workplace that is less volatile, that time is less volatile. Now, for many workers, for many everybody's, there are people who need to plan their weeks in advance. That is, anyone who has kids, anyone who is in a class, or even somebody who has another job. And so this just-in-time distributed scheduling can't solve all the problems. And so what are kinds of alternatives that are available? Well, it's possible to create two-sided markets where there are clear incentives for both worker and employer to arrange these kinds of schedules well in advance, not just at the last minute, and not trying to create a world where the times are all equivalent. So you could easily imagine that. You could also imagine a world where we move from silos of scheduling software like Kronos or Homebase or some other scheduling software towards a common language, a set of APIs that allow these different scheduling systems to intercommunicate so that workers at Starbucks and workers at the Gap, as well as the employers of those same workers, could see what these overall schedules are and somehow, through algorithms as a first pass, really respond to the needs and preferences of both workers and employers. So creating a common system of workforce management. Now, we know that this is important. We know this kind of volatility is important to mitigate. And this is also coming out of the JP Morgan study, that those who have access to these kinds of digital workforce options can mitigate their income volatility. Those who worked on Uber or other kinds of digital labor platforms were able to reduce their month-to-month borrowing and smooth out their income volatility. And this is why it's important to understand and promote the opportunities for workers and employers to create this optimal job mix. Because it's not just about money, it's about control over one's life and control over one's debt, both of which are crucial issues in today's labor market. Now, another response is to simply intervene legally. And this has been something that's been done at the local level in many different communities, starting with San Francisco, with its Retail Workers' Bill of Rights beginning in January of 2015. Now, that focused on retail chains, and it caused these chains to require to have consistent scheduling for their shift workers, to have a 2-week notice of schedules, to pay them if shifts did get canceled at the last minute. And then this is a good response, but it can't be the only response. Because while it's nice to have these legal empowerments in local communities, it's still at the local level. It's still not at the federal level, and many, many workers are still not part of these retail chains in a few select cities. So that's great for people who work at Target in San Francisco, but it's not great for everyone else. And so it's not sufficient to have a legal regulatory approach to this. We need to combine that legal regulatory approach as well with technology and with good business models to help teach both workers and employers that giving more control to workers, more stability to workers, will produce a better workforce at no additional cost. And I think that's the real value proposition here. And so the right solution is not to eliminate computerized algorithmic scheduling. It's about giving flexibility in those algorithms to employers, but especially to workers, to help them balance these competing demands between home and work and a new workplace that was not possible before. And this can be done through intercompatibility, through legal redress, and also teaching workers how to access this new gig labor economy to balance out their portfolio of work with stocks as well as bonds. This will produce workers with better morale, more money than just one job, but we need to empower them through technology, through law, and through business models to make this diversification as painless as possible. Now, thank you for listening, and I'm sorry I can't be there with you, and I hope to hear from you soon online.